G'day. The purpose of this video is to actually show you how to drive OBS. OBS is Open Broadcast System. I think it's freeware, open source. You should download it. You should play with it. It's a really good video capture tool. Now, in order to show you how to drive OBS, I'm going to use OBS to record OBS recording itself, which creates a bit of a tunnel of infinity. You'll see what I mean in a moment. In order to use it, I have to set up some tools that are not there at the beginning. You do have down the bottom of the screen of OBS scenes, sources, audio mixer, scene transitions, and controls. In the sources, I have to add a video capture source. In fact, I've already added one. This little live video is actually a webcam, which is a video capture device, which I have added already, just because a black screen would be a really strange way to start this. What you have to do is go down and click on the little plus sign, and from there choose desktop capture. And when you choose desktop capture, you get this thing, which is a bit of a tunnel of infinity. Now, the reason it's a tunnel of infinity is because it's OBS recording, OBS recording, OBS recording, OBS, as far as the eye can see. And although that looks really weird initially, ignore it, because you're going to be minimizing OBS once you are wanting to record anyway. You can grab the little corners and stretch if you're cleverer than me. It's really fiddly and precise, and you've got to get your resolution of your screen right for that to also look any good. But you can reposition that video source. Similarly, you can reposition any other video sources you've added. So if you'll notice down here in the sources, I have added a webcam. I did that by click on the plus sign, and then I chose a video capture device. As it turns out, I've got a second video capture device. That will be a document camera. When I say OK on that, it will say what do you want to use as your video capture device, and there are a bunch of things in the list: the front camera, back camera if your laptop has one. I've got a document camera whose ELPD, whatever it is. When I say OK on that, I now have another video source coming in. So I've made a video sandwich here. You'll notice that there's the desktop capture, the webcam on top of that, and then on top of that there is the document camera. It overlays my webcam because that's the order they appear here. You can use the up-down arrows to advance, and oops, I'll get that out of the way. So you can see my cursor. Down here, the order of these matches the order of the stack. So I might move these things up and down the stack using these little up-down arrow buttons. Now that you realize that you can add sources here, there are all sorts of types of sources you can add. I can, for example, add a background image. So if I go and choose an image from somewhere as a background, browse, I've got some images somewhere here in my wallpaper collection somewhere down here. You choose a fairly neutral image that doesn't take over. And OK. So again, now I've got an image here. If I want to float that down, below, 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 maybe not that far down, maybe one up. Right, so you can sandwich this where you want it. You want to put it below the video capture device, the desktop capture device though. So I'm going to put it one layer down just so that it is there. And we can sort of see that it's going to be there. And it just fills in any gaps between any of these things that you happen to have laid out and not completely aligned correctly. Once you've got all of your video capture devices, then you need to look at the rest of the interface. We've got this thing called scenes here, and a scene is just a collection for sources. So by default, it comes in with scene 1, I think. And in scene 1, I've added these 4 sources. You've got little eyes that the little eye thingamabobby can make them appear and not appear. So I can hide that, I can hide that, and I could hide that. I'm back again. All right, so just by closing the little eye, you can make various capture devices appear and disappear, which is sort of cool. So the idea behind this then is that I'm going to go for a screen capture, and I'm going to have a little person, me, sitting in the corner. When I've set up my screen like this, then I have to get ready to start recording. Now, if I start recording, then because I've got my desktop capture, I'm going to get my whole desktop, including OBS, which includes this tunnel of infinity. So what I normally find I have to do is I have to start recording and then minimize OBS really quickly. With that in mind, there are a couple of things that you need to consider. In the settings menu, there is hotkeys, and you can specify a hotkey for start, stop, record, which is very handy. The idea here is that you can automate a whole bunch of things, and if you scroll down through the hotkeys, every scene and every device in the scene has hotkeys, which means that you can actually specify via keyboard shortcuts to do various things on each of the devices that you have in the scene. If you add another scene, then the other scene contains a new collection of tools, and you have to then add those tools. Then you can switch between scenes. So quite often, for example, I'll have desktop capture as one, another one just as webcam, talking head, another scene maybe with document camera as the main thing, and talking head up in the corner. So I've used this for origami tutorials, for example, very handy for arranging bits and pieces. Designed really for live streaming, so you could have a game screen and a commentator screen and a scrolling text and all sorts of fun junk here. So what I would normally suggest is you set hotkeys, you start recording, but you hover over minimize before you start recording so that you trigger the hotkey and minimize straight after. Then it doesn't look as though OBS is there at all because it takes a moment for the recording to start. You've then got to remember at the end of the session to stop the recording. When you stop the recording, it dumps out onto the file path that you have specified in your settings in output. So it's going to go out for me to use as Peter Whitehouse videos, and it's going to dump a file out into that folder, and it's going to dump it in a file format called MKV or Matroska file. Now, a Matroska file is a video file that has really good compression, but really not lossy compression. So really high quality videos, relatively small file size. The QCAA requires you to output in MP4, but the beauty of OBS is that it has an MKV to OBS converter built in. It's up in the file menu, and it's a thing called Remux. I think it must have been designed by a New Zealander, because you have to remix the file, remux the file. You go in and choose the OBS file. So there's an OBS file I made earlier. You choose it, and it will then go to the place you want it to, but you can then specify what type of file you want it to be re-encoded into. When you press the Remux button, after a brief moment, it's done it. And now we've got an MKV file version. I can show you, I'll dig to that folder. Out on my C drive, users, VDub, videos. So now I had this one here, which was the MKV version, and I had an MP4 version of the same file, which was a botched attempt at this tutorial because I buggered it up by putting a background image right over the top of everything and then kept explaining, and all you could see was the background image. Which brings me to an important point. You don't do this sort of thing at the last moment. You really have to play with the tool. You have to understand how it works. You have to burn some video, throw away some video, check that you understand how the tools work. So for example, the audio mixer here, I have muted my desktop audio because I've got Spotify currently playing, and I don't want the Spotify soundtrack to be recorded as part of my video as well. So there's a little speaker there that I can actually mute. If I wanted music in the background, I could have it playing. That would breach copyright, so you'd need to be careful with that, I guess, if it was going for a commercial or trying to be uploaded to YouTube. They're really particular about copyrighted material being part of background music on a video, for example. We also have microphone settings here, and you can choose which microphone. So if you have Multiple devices that have multiple microphones. You can specify which microphone is the lead microphone and what volume it records at. So you should play with that as well, because crappy video sound doesn't make up for the fact that the picture is really good. So the sound needs to be good as well. You can access that all through the settings, which microphone, and you've got a volume control here that allows you to specify. So you can see, for example, that I have 2 sound sources that I could use. I've decided on the microphone aux because that gives me the cleanest sound, and the microphone is directly in front of where the webcam is. That makes the most sense for where the noise comes from. But I, at home, have a stereo microphone that I plug in and have it by the side, and that would be the other source that I have. So you should play with this. I think it's a tool that DigiSolutions students should use. I've played with a lot of video capture tools. None of them have impressed me as much as OBS, and I think you should give it a try. It is free to download. Just Google OBS and find the most recent version. They are updating all the time. That's the beauty of open source, is that it's pretty accessible, pretty easy to drive. Well, kinda. I think this interface was designed by an engineer, not by a human, because it doesn't make inherent sense. As I said, it took me ages to work out how to drive it until somebody showed me how it worked, and in 5 minutes I was fine. But trying to work out on my own without looking at video tutorials, because that's not really what I do, I couldn't make sense of the interface initially. I'm hoping that this has demystified it a little bit and encourage you to give it a go. If I can make video recordings, you certainly can, because you're the ones that are creative. Thanks for listening. Give it a go.